Hello, everyone. I just wanted to give people a few more minutes to join on. So if you just be a little patient, we will start in probably about 3 minutes or so. Okay, hello again, everyone. Welcome. So happy you could join us this evening for this webinar on dialogic reading. Again, we're joined by our expert at the Speech Audiology Canada. Her name is Caroline Erdos, and she's a speech language pathologist, the coordinator of speech language pathology at Sir Wilfrid Laurier School Board, and an SLP advisor for SAC. Previously, she was the Advancing Learning and Differentiation and Inclusion Coordinator for the 10 English school boards in Quebec, where she supported resource teachers through various professional development initiatives. With over 20 years of experience as pediatric SLP, her areas of expertise include bimultilingualism, reading and language disorder, FASD, and craniofacial differences. Caroline has lectured at several Canadian universities. She has also been invited to present at numerous conferences across North America and has written and collaborated on several publications. So welcome, Caroline, and I'm joined by my colleague Suzanne as well. And we welcome you from the Canadian Childcare Federation to this webinar. And I will come on at the end of the webinar as well, but just so you know, for now, you are muted. You're in mute, but we will offer an opportunity at the end if you want to ask some questions. And we have a question. You can put a question into the question bar. I think or you can raise your hand at the end, and we can do it that way too. So if you just save your questions till the end, we can do them then. We'll be happy to do them. And I know some of you will be asking you about certificates, and we will be sending out certificates within the week after the webinar. So we will do that, plus a follow-up email with some additional resources. So I will turn it over now to Suzanne, who's going to kindly do our land acknowledgement. Welcome, Suzanne. Hello.
Hi, Robin. Thank you. We respectfully acknowledge that the land on which the CCCF is located is the traditional, unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. We recognize all Indigenous people who were here before us, those who live with us now, and the 7 generations to come. As Indigenous people have done since time immemorial, we strive to be responsible stewards of the land and to respect the cultures, ceremonies, and traditions of all who call it home. As we open our hearts and minds to the past, we commit ourselves to working in a spirit of truth and reconciliation to make a better future for all. Today, these lands continue to be shared territory and are occupied by many diverse peoples from near and far. A treaty is an inheritance, a responsibility, and a relationship. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration.
And over to you, Caroline. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. I'm so delighted to be here. I will share my slides. Bear with me. There we go. So this evening, we will be talking about dialogic reading, and I'm very excited to be speaking with you all because as educators, you can play a very important role in building children's language skills and language abilities. And dialogic reading is a very fun, engaging way to do that. So I'm hoping that you'll enjoy this as much as I do. I've conducted a lot of dialogic reading sessions with little people, and I just find that it's one of the best activities to do with young children. So my plan for this presentation is firstly to talk about, well, what exactly is dialogic reading? What are the benefits of dialogic reading? Why is it worth doing in your groups? We will go through dialogic reading in a step-by-step fashion with some videos for you to see exactly what this looks like. And we will briefly address some key aspects to keep in mind for learners of an additional language. So firstly, I wanted to share this video with you. You may have heard about the 30 million word gap, and this video is about that. And you'll see that the story is a little bit different than what was originally thought. So I'm going to go ahead and play this, and the sound should be ready to go. All good for the sound?
Our laboratory is really interested in understanding how children's minds and brains grow and develop. The field has largely used this term, the 30 million word gap. And that comes out of research where researchers recorded home conversations between parents and children of various levels of family income and education. And they estimated or calculated that a child who arrives at the beginning of school, who comes from a high income, high education family, has heard 30 million more words spoken to him or her than a child who comes from a family where there's lesser education and lesser income.
So the question is why, and what do we do about it? We know that the language exposure is contributing to the children's language abilities, but what is the mechanism underlying this input-output relationship? How is the language exposure translating into a language gap?
And the second thing we were very interested in is, although we know that this word gap is associated with family income, how close is that relationship? So we had to go look for lots of parents with kids from a broad range and diverse backgrounds in terms of income and education at home, and ask them to wear a device at home so we could record the number of words that were spoken between parents and children, as well as the number of conversational turns.
We had a small fleet of audio recorders that children would actually wear in a shirt pocket, and they would wear these from the time they woke up to the time they went to bed at night. And then we would use speech recognition algorithms to determine how much speech they had been hearing and how much speech they had been producing themselves, and then how many back and forth turns they'd been taking with other conversational partners.
And then the children came in, and this was the exotic part of the study. They went into an MRI scanner, and we recorded their brains as they heard little stories that were spoken to them while their brains were being monitored through functional magnetic resonance imaging.
Neuroimaging was pretty labor-intensive as well. Working with children as young as 4, it's very difficult to do MRI scans with them because they have to lie perfectly still so that we can get nice, clear images. So I'm sitting next to our mock scanner. It's a wooden replica of what the MRI scanner actually looks like. And if they move too much, the motion-sensitive camera will cut off their video. So it's kind of a conditioned training for these children to teach themselves to lie still while they're doing the imaging session. After we finished collecting all of the data, we were excited to look at how the home language experience related to the brain functions. And what we were surprised to find is that the number of adult words didn't seem to matter at all for the brain function. What mattered was the number of conversational turns.
The part of the brain that showed the biggest difference in relation to conversational turns at home is one of the 2 major language areas of the brain. So it's called Broca's area. And what we saw was that the more these children had conversational turns at home, the more this area was engaged as they heard stories spoken to them while we were imaging their brains. The second thing we were surprised by a little bit was that it didn't matter the education or income level of the family. What mattered was how often these conversations turned back and forth.
So we're taking these results as sort of a social optimism of sorts, because socioeconomic status, or SES, is largely difficult to change, but a conversation with your child is something much more simple, much more malleable.
So our next goal is to work on interventions that will help families have more of these conversations back and forth. Can we not only describe this relationship, but can we foster and enhance it so more parents are comfortable and supported in having these kinds of critical conversational turns with their children?
All right. So I hope that this video is as exciting to you as it is to me, because essentially what this says is contrary to what we thought before, which was the more words children hear, the more developed the language areas of their brains. Now we're realizing that it's really not about the number of words, but rather the number of conversational exchanges with children. And so this is a very interesting activity, the dialogic reading, that parents can do with their children in order to keep those exchanges going, to build those parts of their children's brain. But it's also something very interesting for educators and teachers, because that's the tricky part, right? When children come in and they're talking to you, you have many of them, and it's hard to keep the conversations going. But one way that makes it much easier is to do that through book reading. And that's why we're talking about this today. So I don't know if you were, if you were paying attention when they talked about the fact that this is something that is shown irrespective of the socioeconomic status of the children. Because we know that children in more affluent families are hearing a lot of words. They have perhaps in some ways environments that are language rich to a higher level than some other children. And this kind of levels the playing field. So this is super exciting. You're building brains and you're building the language areas of the brain of all your children. So we're talking about this especially with you as educators, because the story with language skills and language delay is that the gaps are smallest early on, and with time, the gaps increase. And so if we look at this graph and the orange line and the black line, initially at the beginning, let's say at the age of 2, the gap is very small. But if we wait and we don't intervene with these language-rich activities, the gap will widen, and then these children fall further and further behind. And at school age, this can be very problematic. So we're trying to target strategies that can be used very early on. And dialogic reading is one of them. So I would like you to just take a minute to, maybe you can go ahead and jot in the chat, what do you know about dialogic reading? Maybe you've never heard about it, or maybe you have some information. So I just wanted you to kind of think about that, see where you're at in your knowledge of this before we start getting into the nitty-gritty. I'm just going to give you a minute to do that. I'm noticing that I don't see the chat, so I don't know if it's been disabled, but I will have fun looking at that after. I'm sure that once I stop sharing my screen, I'll be able to see it.
Oh, sorry about that. I could tell you a little bit what people are saying.
Oh, please.
Yeah, so I'm seeing quite a bit of, actually never heard it before. Not knowledgeable of the term. First time they've heard it. So I guess a lot of people, this is the first time for them. And thank you for taking a leap of faith and signing up for the webinar, because maybe you didn't know too much about it, but this is a great opportunity to learn from an expert. So we're happy you joined us this evening, and it's going to be full of learning, I guess, for a lot of people. Some have said, I've heard it a little bit, but not sure. So there seems to be some uncertainty.
Okay, so we have not been doing a good job, speech language pathologists and other professions in the area, of communicating this really important information to you, because this is a very high leverage strategy that has been studied. And essentially what it is a way of reading to children whereby you are intentionally focusing on building their oral language skills. And you're doing this by doing a few things. Firstly, you're reading aloud the book. You are involving the child in the storytelling. You're making connections with the child's experiences and the book and the story in the book. And you're going beyond the script of the book by encouraging the child to predict or compare, reflect, and expand on certain ideas. And you'll see that there are very specific prompts that we give to students and to children as we're engaging in dialogic reading. This is something that can be done for children as young as 2 years of age, and it has been studied through early elementary schools. So it's definitely appropriate for kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, and even beyond that. From the family point of view, it could be very interesting because some families will say that they would like to continue the conversation, but they really struggle to have something to talk about. And a book does that. Whether the book has print in it or just pictures, there is something to talk about. Books, of course, are excellent because they expose children to vocabulary that they may not otherwise hear. You know, if all of the language is happening through conversation only, that's a certain level of vocabulary and a certain level of sentence structure. But books have another level of vocabulary that is a little bit less frequent, and grammatical sentence structure that is a little bit more complex. So we're also kind of pushing the language modeling. So dialogic reading, as I said, has been studied, and it has been found to result in gains for both neurotypical children as well as children with language issues. It has been found to be effective for children from high and low socioeconomic backgrounds, and it's been found to be effective for multilingual learners. So really, probably most, if not all, children in your care. When we compare it to regular reading, regular book reading, as one would do without these prompts that we'll be talking about today, dialogic reading results in greater vocabulary gains. So when we test the children, we see that they know more words when they have been exposed to dialogic reading. And they make greater gains in other areas, like grammar, for example. And studies have studied this with teachers engaging in dialogic reading, educators engaging in dialogic reading, and parents. And you'll see in one of my last slides, even older siblings, and the gains are there. So then the 3 key elements that you want to keep in mind for dialogic reading are to highlight vocabulary words, to ask specific questions, and to connect the book or information in the book to the child's life, or connecting 2 parts of the book, the ending of the story to the beginning of the story. So connections, vocabulary, and questions. So when we talk about dialogic reading, we use some acronyms to help you remember what you need to do. And in fact, there are some nice bookmarks that have these acronyms, and I would be happy to send those along with the slides so that you have those and you can use them in the book that you're reading to remember the prompts. So the first acronym that we use is the acronym PEER, P-E-E-R. So the first P stands for prompting the child to say something about the book. So a simple prompt would be, you point to a truck and you say, "What's that?" And the child might say a truck, or the child might give you more and say, "She paint a truck." So that's the first P. Then the second letter is E. We evaluate the child's response. So that means that we give them feedback about that response. So we could say something like, "You're right. And here we can add something. We can say, but it's a special truck. It's a fire truck. So we evaluate and we can add something. That adding is the second E, that is expand. So we're expanding the child's response by either rephrasing it to correct something that was not accurately stated, or by adding information. So if the child just says a truck, or the child says she painted a truck, we can say, yeah, she painted a fire truck. So P, E, E, and then the last letter is R for repeat. We're going to repeat the original prompt to make sure that the child has learned from our expansion. So we're going to say the girl painted a fire truck. So that's how we would go about doing this. So peer, prompt the child to say something about the book, evaluate the response, expand the response, and repeat the model to the child. So that's peer. And then the second acronym that we want to keep in mind is the CROWD acronym, CROWD. And that CROWD is the 5 different ways to prompt the child. So if I go back to my peer slide, that first P was prompting the child to say something about the book. So CROWD is the 5 different types of prompts that we can give children. So the first letter is C, and that's a completion prompt. So we're going to say something whereby the child simply has to complete the phrase. So we're purposefully leaving a blank. So we would use this type of a prompt when the child is already familiar with the book. Because of course, if they're not familiar, they can't complete our sentence. But if we've read the story of the 3 pigs a few times and we know the children know that story well, then we might say something like, he huffed and he puffed and he blew the house, and we leave a blank. So that's a completion prompt. The next letter is R for recall prompt. So you could also, instead of the completion prompt, you could choose to give a recall prompt. And this is where the child has to recall or remember something that happened in the book. So can you tell me what happened to the wolf in this story? So you might have that as a recall prompt. So you would use this at the beginning of the book if the child has read the book before, or at the end of the book if they have never read the book before. So that's the R, so C, R. The next letter is O. That's for open-ended prompt. An open-ended prompt is a prompt where the child would not just respond with one word. Open-ended is we're asking for more information. So something like, tell me what's happening in this picture. That's an open-ended prompt. So C, R, O, we're now at W. W is the WH prompt. So this is where we would ask what, where, when, why, who, how type of question. So we're going to point to something maybe and say, what's this called? That's a WH prompt. So now we are at the last letter of that acronym, D. That's a distancing prompt. This is where we ask the child to relate something in the book to an experience they have had outside of the context of this book. So for example, the 3 little pigs, we might say, do you remember when we visited that farm last week? What color was that pig? So that's called a distancing prompt. So this is something removed from the story that is connected.
Carolyn, sorry, could I interrupt you for a second?
Yes.
I'm not seeing your slides. Are you showing us slides?
What?
I'm not seeing that. That's what I thought. I thought, wait a minute, she usually has lovely slides. I'm seeing your lovely face and I'm very engaged, but I haven't been able to see any slides yet.
You are kidding. It says
I'm
I
seeing
have-
the slides, Robin.
Okay, I'm sorry. That's what I wanted to check. I see now everyone's seeing them but me. So it's only me.
Okay.
That's okay. Sorry,
Oh,
I just wanted to check in to make sure. I thought, holy cow.
thank
Okay,
you
no,
for
continue
telling me.
on.
I
I'm
almost
so
had a heart
sorry. I'm so
attack.
sorry.
Okay, so you can see
Disregard
the
my comment.
no. Thank you. Phew. I was like, but I'm seeing the red frame and everything. Okay. So distancing prompt. So just to recap, we have two acronyms. We have the PEER acronym, P-E-E-R, the prompt, evaluate, expand, and repeat. But for this first letter, the prompt, there are 5 different types of prompt. And those are remembered with the acronym CROWD. C-R-O-W-D. And the idea is that you're always doing PEER, but your P varies. You're going to do different types of prompts. So sometimes you're going to do completion, sometimes you're going to do open-ended, you're going to vary those because research evidence tells us that it's the variety that is rich for children. So you don't want to get stuck in only ever giving, for example, a completion prompt. You want to have some open-ended prompts. You want to have some distancing prompts. Okay, so the prompt levels, there are 3 prompt levels. So the level 1, or what's easiest for children, are the completion prompt, the recall prompt, remembering something from a story that they know, and the WH prompts. Those are quite simple in terms of prompts. So you might start there. Then the second level is the open-ended prompts, when we ask children for sharing an opinion or telling us what they think will happen next. That's more difficult from a language perspective for children. And then level 3 prompts are those distancing prompts where we're really making connections between the book and the child's life, or between the beginning of the book and the end of the book. That's the most complex form of prompting. So you could work your way through with your group where you start with the level 1 prompts and you see how they're handling those. And then maybe for the next reading or the next book, you're going to move on to level 2 or level 3. Or maybe you have children in your group that are at different ability levels language-wise. So some of your children, you're going to purposefully plan, and you'll see that we prepare the books with little Post-its. And so for some children, you're going to say, I'm going to only be working with level 1 prompts for now. And with others, you'll be going through the 3 levels of prompting. Now, the book that you would want to use for this is a book that is large, if possible, that has also big pictures in it, colorful pictures. I love those giant books. Speaking of the large books, I'm sure some of you have those. Those are, I just find you feel like you can just enter the story, right? So if you have some nice books like that, those super large ones, but they should be very visually appealing as well, with nice colorful pictures. And you want to find stories where there is something to talk about. And there are some books that just don't lend themselves as well to language building. So I'm sure you have your own ideas and your own favorites for books. But I've also provided a link here of some nice children's books that have won awards. I always start there when I'm looking for new collections, that we get some nice ideas from these lists. So this is from Reading Rockets. It's a website that I really enjoy for language and literacy and matters related to books and book reading. And you can find other ideas there. Now, if we think specifically about the vocabulary component of dialogic reading, firstly, reading a story again and again is actually beneficial. This has been studied. So in case you feel like you want to change it up and that maybe it's not as exciting for children. I think those of you who've done this a lot probably know that kids love it when they already know the book, and you can go ahead and read the same book up to 4 times. Gains have been shown for children, especially gains in terms of vocabulary. We need to hear words again and have the opportunity to use them again for those words to be mapped into our lexicon and to become part of the words that we use. For vocabulary words, when you're reading a book, you would only preview or define words that the children absolutely need in order to understand the book. You would not necessarily stop at every vocabulary word that you think is a bit tricky to define that word for children, because that's going to break the flow of the story. So what you want to do is identify some words that if they don't understand these words, they're going to miss the gist of the story. And you're going to make sure that the children know those. I would say that you should stick to around 4 words per book that you're going to be defining for kids and stopping upon. So what you do is, as you arrive at a sentence with a word that you think is tricky, you're going to ask the children whether they know what that word means. If a child gives a plausible and decent definition of that word, we go with it and we move on. Otherwise, you kind of clarify the meaning of the word, and then you continue the story. For our multilingual children, it's really a great idea to help them see the similarities across the languages. So say you have some children in your group who speak English and French, or you have at your childcare center exposure to both languages, you might highlight the similarities. So when someone, maybe one of your French speakers says, oh, and banane, and the conversation was happening in English, you can say, yes, banana. Oh, banane, banana. Tu entends? C'est pareil, or c'est similaire, or do you guys hear it? It's almost the same. So really, that's called facilitating the language transfer. Helping children see what's similar across languages is a great way to teach vocabulary. So the students with whom we could do this, so generally we're talking about grade 3 to about grade 2, but as I've said, we can go a bit lower, age 3 to grade 2, but as I've said, we can go lower than age 3. Some 2-year-old children are actually quite interested and will engage at a simple level with book reading, others not. And again, we can go a little bit higher in terms of grade levels as well. And we've talked already about the type of learner. We know that we can do this one-on-one, so a parent can do this alone with their child, and we can do this in small or class-wide groups. Now, what's interesting to use is a template like this as you're reading your story. So you might have this visual up on the wall, or if you're very technologically savvy, you might have this on your whiteboard, on your smartboard. And so I've given you the links here for this story map. The document actually continues with some blanks under the pictures. And this is to start talking about story structure with your young learners. So even though they're little, we can use words like characters and the problem of the story and the setting. Where was this story? Were they outside? Where was this happening? And so as you're going along talking about parts of the story, you can point to the different components. And this link here is actually the same template, but now the teacher has sketched the parts of the story. So I'll try showing you that. Hopefully I won't mess up my screen sharing. Can you see the template with the hand drawings?
Right now, I'm still seeing the story map, and graphic organizers can help.
Okay, so I'm going to unfortunately, we have to stop share and then start again. So I will do that. I'd like you to see this. It's kind of neat. Here, can you see that now? The story map with the sketching.
Yes.
Someone's
Yes.
someone's saying
Perfect.
yes.
Thank you. Okay, so this is something that you could do as you're reviewing the story with the children. Once you're done reading the book, you could sketch in the different parts of it to help children understand parts that they may have missed. So you'll see that I've provided both links there. I'm going to stop sharing again and go back to my presentation. Unfortunately, it's the only way. Here we are. So this is where we were. So I would now like to show you short videos of the different components of dialogic reading so that you see it in action as promised. So here's a short clip about preparing the book. So it's helpful to do that in advance so that you have these very clever prompts at the right time without having to think on the spot as you're reading the story. So I'm going to go ahead and show this to you. Probably going to have to stop sharing. Yeah, you're not seeing the video, are you?
No, not seeing
No.
the video,
Okay.
just the link.
Okay, so I think I've figured out how this works. So here we go. Now you're probably seeing the video. So this is the short
Yes.
clip on preparing the book.
I'm not hearing sound on this.
I may have forgotten that. I apologize. Click on sound. Can you hear it now?
In this video,
Yes.
a teacher prepares her book selection for a read aloud that will include using dialogic reading strategies. The teacher first previewed and read the book so that she could identify opportunities to engage children in the dialogic reading experience using specific prompts. As we've learned, these prompts have a specific purpose: to provide opportunities for children to practice new oral language skills and for adults to elaborate children's responses and provide rich language models. After the teacher generates prompts of various types using the crowd strategy planning sheet, she transfers them to sticky notes to place in the book. Because this is a new strategy for her, she includes the letter C, R, O, W, or D associated with the prompt. This helps her identify the expected responses so that she is ready to scaffold and elaborate language when children respond. Once all of the prompts have been transferred to the sticky notes, the teacher previews the book again and places the prompts on the appropriate pages. This helps her know when she will pose a question in the context of the text. Now when she reads this book to her children, she is ready to engage them in dialogic reading and maximize their oral language experience.
So that's how you would prepare the book, just with simple post-it notes where you write your prompt and you stick it on the page. The next video is introducing the book. Let's see if I can go to it this way. No. Do I have it here? I'm trying to not stop the sharing, but no. Okay, I'm going to stop share just a quick second and we'll get that other one. Here's the next video. I'm hoping you can see and hear it. But introducing the book.
Here's our story. This is called Carrot Soup. Carrot Soup, and the author and the illustrator is John Segal. Give me a thumbs up if you know this book. Okay, a couple of you have seen this book before. He wrote the words and he drew the pictures. And John Segal. Now, I see a rabbit on the front of this book. That gives me an idea
I see a dog on the book.
What this book might be about. What do you think is going to happen in this story?
Carrot.
I see some hands. Diego, what's going to happen? What about carrots?
Rabbits.
Rabbits and carrots. Diego sees rabbits and carrots. Can we put those together and add some more? Joshua, what do you think?
I see a dog.
See, and what does that tell you is going to be in the story?
A dog. A soup. Because I see the soup in its hand.
You see the soup in his hand. So what does that tell you about the story, Cam?
We're going to cut the carrots up and put it in the soup.
Okay, Christopher said they're going to cut the carrots up and put it in the soup. Cameron, tell me again.
And then we're going to mix it. The rabbit.
What's the rabbit going to do?
Eat the soup.
Eat the soup. That's a good idea. Mariana, I see your hand. What do you think?
He's going to cut the carrots, put them in the soup, cook them, and when they're ready, he's going to put them in the plate, and he's going to eat them.
You gave us lots of steps for making carrot soup. Cut the carrots, put them in the plate, cook them, then put them in the plate, and then eat them. Wow. Danny, what do you think?
I think when we're done, maybe after that, I'm going to put the carrots
In the oven. So you think maybe the oven is the place where they're going to cook the carrots? Those are good ideas, guys. Philip, did you have something to add? What?
Maybe the rabbit will pull the carrots out of the garden.
Pull the carrots out of the garden. Why would carrots be in the garden?
Because you grow them. Yeah.
You grow them. Did you want to add to that, Philip? You grow them? Yeah. You're nodding. That means you agree, right?
Again.
Okay, let me start reading, and then if you have more to add, tell me, okay?
So I don't know if you noted what types of prompts were being used. Do you have any ideas of, if we think of our crowd, completion, recall, open-ended, WH, and distancing? Do you remember any that you just saw in the video? Is there anything in the chat, Robin?
Not yet. Some people are writing open-ended WH prompt.
Yes. She started with
OWD.
open-ended. Yep. I thought, wow, right out of the gate, an open-ended, right? And then some WH. Yes.
Yeah.
So for introducing the book, you see there was a nice variety there of prompts. And it felt like there was one child, I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but it felt like there was one student who seemed to have a little bit of difficulty towards the right, our right. And when she would look at that student, it was simpler prompts. Okay, so the next video is reading the book with our prompts that are stickies on the different pages. So here we go with that video.
It was spring, Rabbit's favorite season. It was time to plan the garden, order carrot seeds, and look forward to enjoying his favorite food, carrot soup. Rabbit's favorite food is... Everybody say it together.
Carrot soup.
Good. What is your favorite food?
Carrot soup.
Lily.
Noodles.
Now, you know I'll ask you for the types of prompts.
Well, I just like them.
You like them? Okay. Kelsey, what's your favorite food?
All the foods in the whole wide world.
All the foods in the whole wide world. Oh my goodness. Mariana?
Spaghetti meatballs.
Spaghetti and meatballs. Why is that your
Because I love it.
You love it. Let's see what Rabbit is going to do next with his carrots. You ready? Rabbit plowed and planted. Rabbit watered and weeded. He waited and waited and waited. Why is Rabbit waiting?
For the carrots to grow.
I'm looking for something. Oh, Alexis, I see your hand. What is Rabbit waiting for?
The carrot soup.
He's waiting for the carrot soup. He's waiting for the carrot soup. I think there's more to add. Diego, what else can you tell me?
You need a special kind of plant food.
Special kind of plant food. What's the plant food for?
Water to grow.
To grow what?
The carrots.
Right, to grow the carrots. Dog, someone has taken all of my carrots, said Rabbit. Have you seen them?
It's the cat.
What do you see?
The cat is the cat. The cat.
Christopher, you've been sitting so quietly. What do you see?
The cat. The cat had them on.
How did the cat get the carrots?
The dog went away.
Christopher thinks the dog pulled them, or the cat pulled them up. Lily says the dog was away. So, which food did Duck say he likes better? Fish or carrots?
Carrots. Fish.
Annie.
Fish.
Fish. Philip, what did you say? Fish. So, if Duck prefers fish to carrots, then the word prefer must mean that he likes one thing better than another thing, right? I prefer carrots to fish. I like carrots better, but Duck likes fish better. How many people like fish better than carrots? Just show me your hand.
I like fish.
Fish? How many people like carrots better than fish?
Fish and carrots.
How many people like Kelsey like both fish and carrots?
I like both.
You like both?
I like
Everybody look at Rabbit's face.
sad.
Why does he feel that way, Alexis?
Because nobody was sharing the carrots with him.
Oh my goodness. And that makes him feel disappointed. Have you ever felt disappointed about anything? Show me a hand if you can tell me something that made you feel disappointed.
Did you hear all the rich language in there? I find that so lovely to hear these beautiful exchanges, refining the meaning of words for children, having them. What other types of prompts did you hear this time in this video?
Distancing, completion, WH. Oh, geez, now they're going so fast, I can't even read all of them. Defining a word, everyone's very excited. Recall.
Yeah. All of that. And it was so well done, right? And the children are all attentive there because they are allowed to participate in the storytelling. That's the part that kind of keeps their attention for the most part. So yes, there are children sometimes who will disengage and who will walk away. There are children with language comprehension issues where it's less accessible to them. It's not going to be perfect with every group, but we can engage them. We can, I often work with teachers and I say, just photocopy parts of the pages, cut out. So in this one, for example, there was the rabbit, there were carrots. So I would have photocopied maybe a carrot, maybe a rabbit, and give it to the children and say, when you see that, I want you to tell me. And so their role is simply to match and to look for something that matches the picture they're holding to keep their engagement if they're the type of child for whom a lot of talking and language is not as meaningful. But for the most part, this is what we get, very engaged children. So it's kind of fun. And then finally, the last video is about ending the story and closing the book. So I'd like to show this to you.
Now, listen very carefully to my question. How would you feel if your friends gave you a surprise party?
Happy.
Joshua, how would you feel?
Happy.
Happy, why? What would make you feel
Because I like surprises.
You like surprises. Cameron, how would you feel?
You write in your hand. Excited.
Excited? Tell me why you feel excited.
I like cake.
You like cake, so you think there would probably be a cake at the surprise party? That would make me excited too. What kinds of things have you done at each other's birthday party?
So what kind of a prompt was that?
Just looking to, oh, here we go. Connection, D. These are different answers. I'm just distancing. I'm just.
Yes, I see them now because I didn't.
Oh, do you?
I didn't share my screen yet, so now I see them. Connection,
okay,
distancing, discussion, connection.
Oh, great.
Exactly. Exactly. Wonderful. So let me share my screen. Oops, to move this. There we go. So we've looked at all these parts, and you can, the links are there, so you can watch these again. If you have an assistant in your group, you can watch them together and talk about the videos together before engaging in dialogic reading with your group. Now, when we're talking about our learners of an additional language, there are a few additional things to think about. We want to find ways to help them understand the story, despite their language maybe not being so developed that the words will all be accessible to them. So we want to add a lot of gesture as we're reading the story. Maybe we want to rephrase certain things that are phrased in a way that is less accessible. So if there's a word like the word prefer, for example, in the story that was being read, that's a lower frequency word. So we might want to rephrase that, especially if we have second language learners in our group. Maybe help them understand what that means. Repeating is always very good because sometimes the information goes by very quickly, and if it's not your first language, you need to hear it again to make sense of it. Trying to support the theme with other materials to get at other senses. So the carrots, we might have brought in some carrots to have them touch the carrot, smell the carrot, and that's also very helpful. To facilitate participation, we could do what I talked about, the little picture, and they kind of hold up their picture when they see that. We can have them take turns miming things, the students, so they can act out different parts of the story, whether or not they are second language learners. We could also use more of those completion prompts if it's a story they're familiar with. And the words that we would want to focus on for those children are the cognates, and those are the words that have the same base in their language as in the language that you're reading the book in. We want to focus on as well words with multiple meanings. Those are so tricky for children because if they're focusing on the wrong meaning of that word, it can really throw off their comprehension. So words, and I'm struggling now to think of one. I'm thinking of some French ones like feuille in French means a leaf on a tree, but also a page. And so we would want to clarify that during our book reading if we came across a word like that. We want to also focus on verbs because many children who struggle with language or who are learning a language, the action words will be the words that they're lacking. So we want to target those. And we want to target for the children who are a bit older, what's called academic vocabulary. And these are more for our school age students. So it's words that they need in different subjects in class. A fantastic strategy, if you have a bilingual setting, is bilingual books. So bilingual book reading is where you start a book in one language. So I'm going to start the book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, in English. And then maybe on another day, I'm going to continue it, not repeat, but continue it in French with Souris, tu veux un biscuit? And so that's very interesting, because if you start with their stronger language, they will have caught a lot of the pieces of the story. And then when you start in the weaker language and you prompt them, ah, de quoi on a parlé déjà? C'était qui dans l'histoire? They'll be engaged because they did understand those parts as you presented them in English. So that's one way to build language skills, by going back and forth like this, starting with dominant language, moving to the weaker language, if you're in a bilingual setting, and you can do that. And I'd be happy to send you lists of bilingual books where it's the exact same book in different languages, or the same theme in different languages. And then finally, here's the bit about siblings being interesting dialogic reading partners. And there was even a study looking at children with ADHD in kindergarten and how they responded and made gains with dialogic reading. So this was a quote from research that I found very interesting that I wanted to share with you. And here are some references that you may be interested in. There are lots of them. And that is all. So if we recap, dialogic reading is a very rich way to build language skills. You have 2 acronyms to remember: the PEER acronym, prompt, evaluate, expand, and repeat, and the CROWD acronym, completion, recall, open-ended, WH, and distancing. And I will send you those cute little bookmarks so that you can remember and try practicing it on your own. It's really simple, but it's specific, and that specificity has so much richness in it. It seems like nothing. You're probably thinking, I do this already, and I'm sure you do. But now perhaps you will vary your prompts more, and your children will learn even more. Perhaps you've gained a few strategies for specifically for the vocabulary, and that might be helpful as well. And I would be happy to take any questions that you may have at this point.
Hi, I'm just looking for the questions to see if anybody has any. You can put them in the chat. But thank you so much, Caroline. And I think, just to your last point, I think a lot of us, well, a lot of people that work with children in front line are doing a lot of this already, but they don't realize they're doing it. And I think to know the reasons why behind we should be doing it, and so we can do it with intention, it means so much more. And now they'll be able to do it with real focused intent and know, the impact of doing it, which is great and very empowering for us as educators. So thank you so much, because I think some of those tips and tricks and remembering those prompts will be amazing when they go back tomorrow to work with the children. It's wonderful to have those. And I'll be looking forward to getting those resources, because I will send them out to everybody who attended, because I'm sure they'll love those too.
I saw quickly a comment go by about a recording for the second language. If one doesn't speak the second language and one wants to engage in this bilingual book reading, there's a great website. I will add this as well. I'll add it as a link when I send the slides and the bookmark, where it's Canadian books read in French and in English, where you also have the visual of the book. So I'll send that to you. I share it all the time with preschool teachers.
Oh, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a great tool. And someone's asking if they can use this info to articulate to parents. For sure. I mean, I think that's part of the reasons why we do a lot of this professional development at night as educators too, because then we can talk to the parents that we work with and with their children and explain to them why we do the things we do and the importance of them. So for sure, by all means, we'd love for you to share this information, because they can do it at home as well. This empowers, as much as it empowers us as educators, it also empowers parents.
Yes, and as I said, there's some families, for me as a speech language pathologist, it's shocking, but some families are very quiet with their children. They sit in the waiting room. I remember if I sit in the waiting room, I'm talking, but that's my profession, right? And my nature. But some families, they're so grateful to have something to talk about. So, and if literacy is challenging for them and you sense that, they're beautiful wordless books with just pictures, and that works just as well. It works just as well for dialogic reading. So we don't have to put that pressure on parents to read. It's just talk about what you see. And that's
that's a wonderful
impact
tip.
will be there too.
Because it is that shared reading time, right? It's that opportunity to sit with your child and to have conversations. I mean, I think that's the biggest part of it too, that people don't realize how important that is, and especially with those wordless books. I mean, it's a wonderful way to start that and really have a parent or an educator feel really confident, do that for and then move on. But I mean, it's a great place to start, isn't it?
There is a question in the question and answers, and
Mhm.
it says, do you have a specific number of children as an audience?
I think it depends on the composition of the group. It depends on the age of the group. I've done this most often with 8 to 10 children. I've seen teachers do it, which has always impressed me, with their larger groups, and somehow they're able to do that as well. The children are all huddled very, very close. I think the key is to try and use the model that we saw in the videos. She's on the floor with the children. You don't have to be on the floor if you're not able to, but just you're sitting as much as their level as possible. You're very close to them where you can reach out. Do you see how she was reaching out and touching the children who were having a bit of a harder time staying focused and not taking over? So she would just reach out to them and kind of had a calming effect on them by just calmly touching them. That's very helpful. But I don't think there's a prescribed group size. I've done it one-on-one. So whatever you can manage behaviorally is what you do. You could also be doing story time with a few kids while a few others are playing in the kinetic sand or doing other activities. Sometimes that happens in the group where you do have a few moments where you can, and then others come and join, of course, because they don't want to miss what's going on and that's fine too. You can just start it, and when the children, a few of them are getting a little antsy, you can say, okay, we're going to continue this tomorrow. You don't have to plow through the book either. You can leave them on a suspense. Yeah.
Leave them hanging.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Caroline, for joining us this evening and giving us all these great tips and strategies. I know it's going to make a better day for everyone tomorrow. They'll be all excited to get back to work and working with the children. And I will be sending out that follow-up email to everybody, as well as the certificates will come, and that will be within a week of the webinar. Just so look in your emails. There'll be 2 separate emails. The certificates come separately than the follow-up email with resources in it. So thanks again for joining us this evening, Caroline. And thanks, Suzanne, for helping out when I couldn't see, but you were my eyes, so that's a great team. And have a great evening, everyone, and we hope you'll be joining us again.
And if you have French colleagues, we're doing this again in French next week, right?
Yes, and tell your French colleagues. Or if you want to join in French too, you could do it bilingually. That would be fine.
But the videos will be in English, unfortunately. We couldn't find anything equivalent in French. I looked, I had a few things, but they're not as targeted, so.
Oh, we'll have to muddle through.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be fine.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks for joining.